Hello, everybody, and good evening, good morning, good afternoon. After we have skipped last episode for participating friends on Dreamforce and for the audience to have an exact on the same timeline keynote watch event and learn about the latest inspiring innovations or smart wrapped up marketing talks and informations from Salesforce, we would like to jump into another buzzword topic. As after ages ago, it may be around 23 to 24 years, when Don Peppers and Martha Rogers wrote a book about the future of marketing, the one-to-one marketing. We have today the pleasure to reflect the buzzword hyper-personalization, why, how, where, and talk with our expert Michael Obermeier on some successful implementation and results on the way from the starting point, where we have now the second opportunity to exchange with him, um, learn from his insights and his expertise over the ages. I have the pleasure to know Michael for quite some time, and we have had the opportunity to work in the CRM arena with some Austrian organization together. And in the learning phases, he is quite fascinated on the opportunities how technology has developed. Now, taking it short to you, Michael, tell us a bit about your background and what is your current role in SAS.
Yeah, first of
Welcome.
all, thank you. Yeah, thank you for having me a second time actually. So that's already a great honor. Yeah, so a bit about myself maybe. So you already alluded to us knowing each other for quite a while. I dare say it's almost 2 decades now. Actually, my track record is mostly CRM. So this is where I grew up, and this is my passion and my background.
Yeah.
But I also then obviously evolved as the buzzwords evolved more into customer experience management topics, marketing automation, and eventually now I'm in the privileged position to work with one of the technology leaders in the space of AI and analytics in combination with marketing technology products to make hyper-personalization, a word we will discuss more later, real.
I'm already cringing.
Yes. So, and just about the role. So I've been with SAS now for 2.5 years, roughly. I started here as the lead for the topics marketing technology and customer experience management solutions for the German-speaking zone, as we call it internally. So Austria, Germany, Switzerland. And recently took over the lead for the Central and Eastern European region, which is kind of like, it's a vague definition from Germany to Greece and from Switzerland to Romania. That's pretty much a pretty big region, very, very diverse, very interesting. Also in the maturity levels in the different countries and also within the industry. So we cover everything from banks to insurances to telcos, utility companies, retailers, obviously. So in essence, any organization that has a lot of consumer data, a lot of touch points, a lot of on and offline interactions with the consumers, ideally in a highly competitive market, because this creates the need to have a platform that helps them better understand their customers and activate them, obviously. So this is the field we're working in, and my organization helps those companies basically improve their understanding of their customers and ultimately to serve them with relevant experiences. Let's put it that way. Yes, in a nutshell.
So stop counting the buzzwords after 7.
Good. Has everyone got his bingo cards ready? So
The aspect is, aside of the buzzword bingo we are playing, and nobody has shouted already bingo. The story behind personalization and the benefit of getting the information I would like to receive and not what somebody else thought he might throw at me, is a positive idea. From the last 24 years in development, what is your observation that as we have now much different technology as foundation, are we making progress, or are we, to put it in blank words, still spammed like hell?
It's a slippery slope you're laying out here. The truth is, obviously, we have now tools that are way more powerful than they were 20 or 30 years ago. So when I started, back in the days as a junior CRM, consultant, those were like, there were databases, you could do some simple queries, and the target groups you get out of this were very, very simple. And you were basically just blasting people with, newsletters and all kinds of offers. Not really very intelligent as such. Now we have the opportunity to use, as I call them, segments of one, right? So you can use analytics and AI in combination to really slice and dice the data in any shape or form, understand different scores of how likely is that somebody's interested in a certain product, how likely is somebody going to cancel their contracts, or how likely is it that a customer who buys in category A will also buy in category C. You can do all these things today, and you can do it in a highly scalable way, in a highly intelligent and highly automated way these days. Nonetheless, we all know that the saying, "A fool with a tool is still a fool." So, having said that, the technology just made it easier to send more stuff to more people. And it really ultimately comes down to the strategy that's behind it and the way how you set up the governance around the whole topic that makes it useful and relevant to consumers.
What can vendors do to entice their customers to make their personalization and what they send out more useful to consumers? I ask from my humble perspective. So I may or may not be a good example, but I hate being blasted with whatever personalized or unpersonalized stuff, because it comes when vendor is interested in selling something to me.
Yes. And I think we all agree here in this call, probably everybody who's listening to this episode right now, that we all hate, even if it's personalized in terms of like, "Hey, Michael, we have this great offer for you." In the end, that offer is probably not as great and not as relevant when I get it, because somebody didn't pay enough attention, didn't, invest a lot of time in actually researching if that thing is relevant to me. Now, what can software vendors do? I think ultimately, from a technology standpoint, we can help organizations to properly use those products and help them also in the way, let's say, educating them. But ultimately, we're not the ones who are doing the strategy. And there is a great report, or even a book, if I remember it correctly. It's called The Long and the Short of It. It basically looks at the different effects of marketing in terms of performance marketing versus brand building marketing. And what we see is that in many organizations, the focus on short-term gain and short-term metrics is much higher, so that people obviously lean towards more the performance marketing piece of the equation, and sometimes think like the branding piece. And this is where people get frustrated with marketing from these organizations, because all they hear is buy, instead of, "Hey, I'm interested in a relationship with you as a customer, not as a relationship with my car insurance company wants to cuddle with me," but kind of like being, at least to some extent, invested in, my life events or anything that is more relevant than just, renewing me every year. And I think if organizations get that mix right between building a brand, building up that trust, building up that mental availability of their brand when it counts, versus just, trying to sell me stuff, then you get the right kind of balance that consumers appreciate the messages you send them. That makes sense.
Makes
This
sense.
is something, just to answer, to finish the sentence. So, I say we collectively as a software industry, we can certainly try to influence that way of attitude and thinking about things, but ultimately, it has to come from the organization itself and from the top down in the way how they, see their customers, see the market, see the competition and how they want to kind of like position themselves against everyone else in that market.
Marshall, you had one.
I was just saying that it makes sense, but it's a very tricky balance to strike, as you just said. And it's different depending on what sort of engagement you're talking about, right? Marketing personalization is different from customer service personalization, is different from sales personalization. How does one
Yes.
decide what is too much?
Well, I think the market decides what's too much. The consumer decides what's too much, and they show it through different signals, right? It could be as simple as just unsubscribing from all communication, which in itself is already a huge issue, right? Because if I no longer have a channel to communicate with my customer, then ultimately I will see that customer go, which is just yet another signal of a customer showing you like, it seems to me, your brand, you're not interested in me just in selling me more stuff. And actually, I don't want more stuff. I'm happy with what I have, right? And analytics can be one way to better understand where each of those customers are in their cycle, right? In their journeys bracket closed. Is it the ultimate answer? No, of course not. But we can get very close to that answer.
Yeah. The thing is, I had the impression with your let me buy all that stuff and you want to sell to me, that some marketing people have not been evolutionizing in the last 24 years above the famous Muppet sell video. And they are still in that mood of brute force selling, if it's interesting for you or not. But
yes,
lacking the communication lines and cutting everything, I would get the fear of missing out, that I miss one of the special offers which might be interesting for me. So I would like to have, and then we jump into your analytics part, that they know a bit from my former behavior what an anticipation might get into the right way, that they probably hit the right button with this special offer.
Right. Maybe I want to give you a segue into the analytics piece, because there's been an interesting study by McKinsey, and I love to quote it because it's interesting in how they look, how they learned about personalization by asking, I think, 4,000 consumers globally. So that one of their questions was to consumers, what do you associate with personalization? What is personalization for you? And the answer it all came down to was that consumers associate personalization with, and now that's interesting, but with a positive experience, giving them a feeling of being something special. So they are not talking about getting a coupon or getting 3 emails per week or being greeted by first name when you enter the store. It was more like this, meta kind of like feeling of being something special. And obviously that's a very different thing for very different people. It would be different for Thomas, for Marshall, for Ralph, or for myself. But that's what it comes down to. And what I also found interesting was like the second thing they found out was what consumers most expect from the brands they buy from is being recognized as individuals with their own interests and needs, and that those brands do not invest only in transactions, but also in the relationship, right? I mean, and this for me says it all, right? So this is like the segue to analytics, obviously, because if I want to be seen as an individual with my particular needs and interests, when I have tens of millions of customers, the only way to understand each and every one of them is by applying advanced analytics, kind of like make a guesstimate of where they are in the particular journey, where they are in the particular life stage, and what could be now possibly the most relevant thing. And I'm not saying the best offer, the most relevant thing for them. It could be anything. It could be a recommendation for how to use their existing product better. Or maybe, just to give a very concrete example, we have not a grocery store. What's the other term for it? A beauty store. Let's put it that way. A beauty store. And they have a program for young parents where they can sign up even if the baby isn't born yet, right? But once they're in a program, they get a lot of parenting tips, right? It's not about, hey, buy these diapers or buy that cream. They give them tips like, okay, what happens if your baby is not sleeping at night? Or
Yeah.
if it seems to have like stomach ache or. And this is
Getting
relevant
new teeth.
relationship building information.
Mhm.
Kind of like ties them to a brand, and that brand radiates trust. And people repay that trust by sharing more data. So it's kind of like a giving cycle on both ends. And eventually will sell more, but they have invested first in the relationship, right?
Where does it start to be creepy? Because it's more than 10 years ago, meanwhile, where you said fashion and diapers, there was this marketing email that a dad received.
Yes, the Target fail.
It was
Yes.
Target, yeah, it was Target, yeah. So buy some diapers. And so why diapers? I don't have a kid in that age. Yes.
I agree. This all plays into privacy as well, and ethics and in AI, which we are a strong advocate for. I think consent is the key word here. If I have a baby and I sign up for the program and I sign up for, yes, I want personalized messages in the context of that relationship within that program, it should, in theory, not be creepy to get all this messaging and kind of like being also looked at in terms of like, what does my basket look like? What kind of stuff do I buy? And what else could I need? If I'm not aware of, a particular context as a consumer, and like in the Target case where, Target was just, looking at the different articles and categories that were bought, and then basically figuring out that teenage girl was pregnant and mailing to her dad unbeknownst, you could buy diapers. That's a big no-no, obviously.
That is the same no-no like sending alcohol informations and freebies to somebody who has gone dry with a lot of work and a lot of coverage from his friends and is now being tried to be convinced to buy the hell of that stuff what he is not taking care of any longer, or hopefully no longer. And the other thing is there are some famous direct marketing stories on wrong target, wrong timing, when people received still informations when they were already in heaven. Yeah. So that is what we now hopefully, our hell, that is the question. We cannot answer yet. We will see later, or hopefully a lot later. But it is interesting to see that with technology now, we should be able to better, sharper, and more precisely address our target audience when we collect the right informations. Saying that, I would like to ask for an observation from your end as you are with a vendor and you have a lot of customers. In B2C, I'm honestly missing one thing. That is that in the good old shopping arena, I go into a store and I am a consequent buyer in that certain store. They don't know a thing about me at the point of contact at the shelf, even that they have a smartphone, which they use for private stuff, but they are not able to assist me in a way that I would love to receive, such as dedicated information on the product I'm looking for, knowing about my history with them, and some anticipation, not in the fashion area, but what type of mouse or keyboard I would like to use with my old Windows machine, or that they have the special offer, such as some new gear from Apple. Yeah?
Right. Just, I will get to the point in a second, but just there was some other thought that crossed my mind to the ethics piece, because we have one customer in banking who have an ethics manifest for analytics, where he actually say, as a bank, you basically can look into anything. We're like the most in Germany, it's like the most naked as of in any industries,
Yeah.
because based on our bank statements and each line item, the bank can actually understand how many people live in my space, what is my average income, what are my expenses, where is this money going to, and basically anything. So they can also basically figure out the health status of these people, like are they heavy smokers or drinkers. That was basically what triggered me. And obviously they could use this information in the way how they, for example, provide loans or not provide a loan, because they might find that the person will not be able to actually repay the loan based on their lifestyle.
Yeah.
But they don't use that also from a legal perspective. They said, like, we have this ethics code, and while we can do it, we won't do it. And I think this is also an important way of how you should have a kind of like a mindset of technology can do a lot of things, AI can do a lot of things, but that doesn't necessarily mean I will make use of that, right? Now, coming back to your question, Ralph, that's actually a great example. One of our customers, Ulta Beauty, I think Marshall would probably know them, or even Thomas might have come across them. Huge beauty retailer in the States. They use our platform in exactly that way. So obviously they have a ton of different touch points. They have a super successful loyalty program with a penetration rate of 95%. So just it's 9.5, right? So revenues are highly predictable in that model. And they have what they call their customers, they call them guests. So every time a person obviously goes into a brick and mortar store, those guests, when they get recognized or just identify themselves, get greeted personally. And all the history of the customer, all the information of this is Ralph. Ralph is well, we'll stick with the beauty example. Ralph is a buyer of, a certain hand lotion, right? Because it makes your hands very soft and you can easier type on your keyboard, right? And they will have all this information at hand on their handhelds, because they have like a little profile of you, and they know exactly, are you a bronze, silver, gold, platinum, or whatnot buyer. So that basically they have different tiers. I'm not making this up. So the highest tier basically spends $1,500 a year on beauty products, right? So they actually make sure people get treated properly in store and have the same experience as on the website, where obviously digital is doing all the automated stuff. So the staff is trained to create that and deliver a customer experience in store based on the data they have quite literally at hand, right? Now this is not like the norm in the industry, to your point. If I go to any electronic retailer, that's not happening, because most of them are just like, it's mass. It's just, you try to keep those conversations short as possible, unless you're buying like, I don't know, a $5,000 refrigerator that has a built-in, I don't know, TV or something. Then obviously it will take time to talk to you. If you just buy a $15 mouse, they will just, try to keep the conversation short as possible, if they have the conversation at all, right? And I think this is kind of, again, it's a lot about mindset.
Yeah,
you can. Technology could do it, right? And the most organizations probably also have the budgets to build it, right? It's just, do you want to do it as a brand? Is it important to you that customers feel valued when they go into your stores, right?
Could be even more. Just continuing on this thought. So as a brand, to make my people more efficient, what I would want them to have at hand is the feed of the camera that doesn't need Ralph to identify himself, but me being able to go there right away, say, hey, Ralph. Yeah. So, which is probably exactly what Ralph does not like.
If I gave my consent, to be honest, Thomas, and I have an NFC capable machine, and I'm recognized when I enter the shop, then that is fine with me if I had given the consent before. And honest, what I prefer is that they recognize me, that they can assist me, and that I do not get supported reading of a package, which I can read myself.
Right.
How much, let's take that a little back.
Please.
How much personalization is necessary at all? I mean, if you are coming from the term that we are using right now, well, you're personalizing down to my last body cell because it's hyper.
Right.
Yeah. So, but what do studies say where personalization starts to become helpful and where does it stop to be helpful? Where does it actually become harmful?
The first answer, the first reaction is obviously depends, because it will
Of course, yeah.
it will always be different. I mean, what's creepy for me might be not creepy for you, or vice versa, right? So it heavily depends on context. Obviously, it depends on, if I give consent, am I fully aware of what I'm giving consent to? And I give always this simple example of, people tell in a study like KPMG, 7 out of 10 people say, I am scared and afraid what happens with my data that I provide to brands to process them. And I was like, why? I mean, people go on Facebook or on any social platform and post all kind of stuff, pictures, everything, and don't even know what happens with the data, because this data, as we all know, gets used to train their AI models for image recognition, text recognition, and God knows what. And we're fine with that, but we're scared when the bank knows too much about me. So that's absurd to me personally. I don't want to offend anyone, but that's kind of like how I see the world. So I think people need to be adult enough to understand, when you consent to something, that this data can be used in a hopefully useful way. Now, when is personalization useful? There are a couple of examples of, for example, the very simple term of job to be done, right? My job to be done could be, for example, if I'm an insurance customer and I want to handle a claim, right? A very simple way of doing this is by, giving me a personalized experience based on my insurance premium I'm paying. Maybe I get a fast pass on the hotline. Maybe get a special treatment. There could be one way of personalization that's great for me, because maybe I get quicker through the process than someone who is not as valuable as a customer, right? It could be from a sales perspective, that they offer me some additional products, obviously, that are in a meaningful way complementary to what I have, not meaningful for the company in terms of better profits or a better margin, but actually relevant for me as a customer. And I think this is one other key aspect, is the relevancy, right? Is it relevant for me, right? It's not relevant for the organization. If it's a win-win and we both have something out of it, awesome. But if it's not relevant for me, I don't care if the company makes more money. Really, it probably, I'm just annoyed about it. And I think when you think about this in sort of a 2x2 grid, I always love 2x2s. If it's relevant for me and it's profitable for the company, everybody wins. And any of the other quadrants, somebody loses, right? And if I lose as a consumer, it's always bad, no matter how well the personalization was meant. If it's not relevant to me now or ever, probably the personalization wasn't good in the first place. Let's put it that way. Harmful. I think the example you gave with the Target and the pregnant teenage girl, obviously was, it was overshooting, quote unquote, on the analytics front. And I think this is more an attitude, and it's a mindset in an organization of how far can or do we want to go in terms of making deductions out of data. So I give you one example of an insurance company. It was in Germany, where they actually were experimenting with inferred information, right? So they were kind of like deducting based on the information they had about certain things. So for example, they were figuring out that people who were living in the suburbs of certain regions, where there would be a higher than normal income, that most likely there will be families with a second car, probably of a house of a certain size, just based on the contract they had and the information they had from those consumers. And then we were cross-referencing it with people who were living there where we had less information. We just figured out, but most likely those will be families there, without even knowing that those were families. Still, they decided we do an A/B test, and we write as if these people had families, and proposed an insurance that was, some kind of like, how to say, a life insurance, basically, that was, for family members. And surprisingly, they had an 80% conversion, 80% higher conversion than in the control group, right? And absolutely no complaints, no complaints. And you would say like, well, for German insurance, that's super bold.
Yeah.
For insurance, and then for German insurance to do that, because it's risky, right? You could basically, you could get maybe sued by somebody who says like, where did you get that data from and how did you figure it out? But they took the chance and they were super successful with it. Maybe again, there could have been the risk of somebody saying like, well, I don't like the way how you think, quote unquote, think of me and sell to me something without even knowing, right? But they were spot on with their analytics. They did a couple of different models, tried out, how reliable is that model, and then just went for it, right? So maybe somebody was creeped out, but apparently they weren't like angry enough to voice it towards the brand.
How did they communicate that, via email or letters?
I would assume it was digitally because that was a direct insurance. So it's very likely to just do it digitally. Yes.
How did they get the emails?
It's part of the contract information, right?
Yeah.
You can't if you're digital insurance, you need an email address.
Okay, so already, so they went into existing customers.
Yeah. Sure.
Okay,
sure.
so that
Yeah.
part I didn't get.
It was existing customers. It was a cross-sell campaign.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Interesting enough, as you mentioned,
By the way,
we
got some praise.
Yep. Thomas Maywald-Immer, our former guest with the customer experience measurements, is joining us, as well as I received also a little hint from Ginger Conlon from Genesis that she is curious as well what we have to discuss. Interesting is that you mentioned some of the examples. You mentioned the bank. You mentioned now an insurance. I recall that the customized offering is in one of a German bank, existing customers of yours, where we had also the marketing chap here in some months ago, a very important topic. Yes. And they just hit the news again as they are invested by state and some others are trying to buy. So I'm curious how the Addy Award, for instance, in marketing, for doing good marketing, clever marketing, smart marketing, was also enabled by your services and what they did.
Well, first of all, the Addy Award, for everyone who's not living in Germany, is a direct marketing award that basically awards organizations who have an outstanding track record in direct marketing across all channels, and obviously we play a part in some of the winners in the past. It's not like it's us who made them win, but I would say that we had a significant part in that success. Let's
a helping hand to say so. Yeah.
But yes, but again, it's the organization who has that. We're just the tool, but still. And yes, that sad bank, sad
not sad,
ID.
yeah,
no, not sad bank. Has employed several of the tactics and the technologies that as we see the world for hyper-personalization are necessary. And when I talk about hyper-personalization, I usually say like there are 4 core building blocks. Okay, the very foundational building block is obviously to understand your customers, and to do that you have to listen to them on various touch points, right? In the very sense of it, it could be obviously, and the simple ones are digital, because you can track today, you can track anything, you can listen to anything, understand anything technically. But then, of course, there are also like, everything that's happening in the branch, everything's happening at the ATM, everything's happening in the account, and various other data sources. Bring this all together, have the golden record. This is like where everybody talks about customer data platform. Others call it a data lake or a data warehouse. The idea is always the same. You have a ton of different silos of data. You bring it all together to get, in a perfect world, like a 360-degree view. And as one customer recently said, we have only 270-degree, but it's good enough. And it's like, okay, yeah, That's a fair statement. So
Mhm.
that's like foundational building block. You need to listen to your customers. You need to bring that picture together. On top of it, obviously, you need something that helps you understand from an analytical standpoint your customers, right? So you need to understand, okay, what are the segments? What are like the different scores? Like what are product propensity scores, churn scores, up and cross sell, whatever. There can be hundreds of different scores calculated if you are an advanced organization. And if you have a multi-product sales model, then obviously, you get a ton of different information out of your customer base. On top of it, and this is something that I would say this is the difference to what we had in the past when it comes to personalization, is a layer that we call decisioning. It's an engine that basically helps you make the best possible decision anytime a consumer touches your brand. And this decision could be anything from an offer, or maybe it's just like an action, like a next step in their job to be done. It could be any sort of experience, like the recommendations we heard from that one retailer about, parenting tips. Anything that helps, move the relationship forward or move the person from point A to point B to achieve their job to be done, right? And this, like in real time across all the channels, making those decisions. And lastly, at the top, you have activation, right? Marketing automation platform, whatever it is, it's an email tool or it's a more comprehensive, suite that does a lot of different things from journeys to activating the channels. Okay. And when you look at this layered cake, or I always call it like a pancake staple, if Marshall likes that image better, right? This is where we deliver the value for our customers, because obviously, surprise, we can have a solution for each of these layers, right? CDP, customer analytics, marketing decisioning, and marketing automation. Yeah. And that bank is using all these different layers in their marketing technology stack. And they do it very successfully since almost, 10-ish years, let's put it that way. So they had a CDP before anybody called that thing a CDP, because, they understood the concept of it and implemented just differently. And what these guys are doing is they're very advanced in the way how they apply analytics. They have hundreds of different models. They calculate on a daily basis and preparing basically a list of millions of different experiences that are ranked by different scores. And whenever Michael, Rolf comes to one of their touch points in real time, this decisioning brain basically picks out of that list whatever is in that particular case, in that particular context, and with that particular customer's history, the most relevant information. Sometimes it's an offer. Sometimes it's nothing. We just leave that customer alone because we just, had an interaction 2 days ago and the customer didn't react the way we expected them to react, right? This is how the system also learns. So it's a self-learning, reinforcing model is behind that. It kind of like understands also if Ralph ignores that offer 3 times, most likely it's not relevant. So, we discard it, we score it down, whatever the methodology is, right? And by using those combinations of prescribed segments, but also using that intelligent kind of like decisioning of those different activities, they were able to massively increase revenues, right? So I don't know what kind of numbers were shared in the other podcasts. So I would say it was a low 2-digit increase through personalization. I think that's a relevant phrase here. Personalization added, another point, a couple of points there. What I can share is also that they've been measuring conversion rates between hard-coded business rules in the web channel, like they have a CMS platform. It doesn't matter which company, but they have a CMS platform where they have hard-coded rules in a system. When user does this, then show banner ABC. If user does that, do. Okay. Now they're measuring the same with the rules engine. That is, the decisioning engine that's like in real time figuring out, okay, what is the best content to show, and they have 3 times higher conversion rates. And this is where we come from, like more kind of a rule-based personalization to the hyper-personalization, where you really have this, one-to-one conversation between the brand and the consumer. So it feels even more personalized for the consumer, ideally, than when it's just rule-based, where you're basically just a cohort of people who do the same thing. That makes sense?
And at that point in time, it's also it's in context, right? So you have my
Yes.
click stream, means you have my immediate interest or a very good handle on my immediate interest, hence you can react appropriately,
Exactly.
which is leading me to the question, in how far do marketers confuse marketing with advertising?
There's a good question.
Because a banner typically is an advertisement, right? And
Yes,
what I get as an email is typically an advertisement as well.
I think that this comes back to my previous comment, where it's
Yeah.
like, the tools make it so much easier today to
Yeah.
to spam people across all the touch points, even offsite, right? I mean, we'll notice we look at a sneaker at a retailer, and then we go to a different site, and that sneaker follows us, across various different pages. And we actually bought that sneaker just 10 minutes ago, but everybody else doesn't know that.
Yeah.
So I think this is where the personalization goes wrong in a way, right? Because it's no longer relevant, right? It was relevant 10 minutes ago when I checked out, and now it isn't. And people spending so much money in ads that is for nothing. It's really for nothing. But everybody knows it because it's part of the game. It's just like, it's a pay to win. So the advertising industry is pay to win. And the more you pay, the more you bid, the more likely you get that banner place. And then you basically acquire somebody who actually has just bought your product 10 minutes ago. So it's bonkers just to think about it. And that's why I think that, again, I think marketers need to kind of like balance between how much sales activating message do I send out versus how much brand activating messages or brand building messaging do I send out, and strike that balance for consumers. And again, they can't do it by simple rules. It's impossible. So you need some kind of machine, for the lack of a better word, AI model, obviously, that helps you make those decisions intelligently every single time with every single interaction, and in a way that also is commercially viable for the brand.
I would like to step into the customers on the website and is searching and is in the mood. I'm probably searching for information, such as in my energy supplier's contract, and I'm looking in that balance sheet. Have so many children, and we have the typical energy consumption, and I'm going for giving them some figures in that configurator machine, and I get an output. And then the chatbot, but not a bot, but a human being, is at the start, and such as he got an alert, there is somebody who seems to have a challenging question or would be open for support. Then I'm loving to have the right, competent, skillful advisor who gives me, even in the sales role, a special contract I wouldn't have received if I go for the standard, or that I get into an interaction with those experts to consult me on the best possible offering his company can make. Why don't they do it? They have the technology. Have you have expertise?
Profitability, maybe. That's a simple answer. I mean, many of our customers are experimenting, or some of them are even beyond the stage of dynamic pricing in different contexts, right? We all know dynamic pricing from the airline industry. We know it from various other, settings where this is accepted. What's that? Sorry.
Uber.
Yes, exactly. So everywhere where there's, demand.
It's not exactly accepted, but can't get avoided.
Not much you can do about it.
Allogably is, it's you can't just choose to not go with Uber if you like. But the truth is, obviously we have customers in different industries like telco or even energy. And a simple example is we have some telcos who now look at customers, particularly in prepaid. That's also a subsegment where you look at consumption and consumption patterns. And if they figure out that one of the consumers who have a contract with a certain data package, right? And they get close to the end of the month, the package is low, and most likely based on the consumption they have, they're not gonna make it until the end of the month. So they pitch them, obviously, a top up. And the price of the top up is not like list price. It's it's calculated specifically for that user in that particular situation. And we all know that the closer the activation is to the trigger, the higher the conversion rate. Because as soon as the pain is over and somebody figures it's like, okay, well, I just have to throttle my usage. If it's not happening within an hour or so, or maybe two, the probability of converting this customer is close to zero. And this is an interesting thing, and it goes into the same direction that you have, Ralph, right? Why don't brands do it? I think you need to be very smart about it, because there are a lot of parameters which obviously influence that price, right? It's what is your willingness to pay? What is the profitability behind you? Are you a good customer? Are you a customer who might possibly default? So there are a ton of different reasons why not to do it. Maybe they just don't have the data behind it to actually do it in a meaningful way. Because it's almost like another one of these boring sayings, like, but it all starts with the data. And if people don't have their data house in order, anything else is almost meaningless.
Maybe it's too late to ask this, but
Well, sorry, we need to end.
It's like the therapist. Oh, time's up. Let's catch up next week.
We've been talking a lot about having a rich relationship between business and a customer. Something I think we're missing is oversaturation. A person does not have one brand interaction a day. They have dozens. And if everyone is personalized, everyone is seeking feedback, it becomes a labor for the consumer. So how do businesses deal with getting their piece of the pie but not taking up too much?
That's actually a brilliant question, Marshall. And honestly,
I get one every once in a while.
And honestly, I think I don't have a good answer for that, because the truth is, why would any brand, just step back and say like, well, I had my fair share of eyeballs this hour. Let's have, my competitor brand get some eyeballs now. What brands can do is obviously by looking at, how to communicate with the consumers and how they react to this. And react can mean anything from, opening an email or not opening it, or converting or not converting, or anything, right? I send a letter, people scan a QR code, they don't. So there are different means of tracking, interaction. Kind of like understanding when they create oversaturation with their customers. And then maybe, and I'm just saying maybe, develop a model that kind of like moderates the way how they market. What I'm saying is that we have customers, any customer has a very strict set of what we call contact policies. I think there's not a single brand on this planet who doesn't have contact policies, which are very simple, like don't send more than 3 emails a week. Don't do, this or that channel more often than that, or don't go below a certain amount of whatever. So, and you could have that model more tailored to the individual. Again, if you have the data and understand how consumption of content works with Michael, Thomas, Marshall, or Ralph, you could have more flexible content policies based on different individuals. I have newsletters I read every day. Others, I have a folder where I just move them in, and after 9 months, I was like, oh, damn, there are 300 unread emails in there. I'll probably just delete them because I won't have the time to read them anyway.
Okay.
Why are you still a subscriber to these?
That's an excellent question, Thomas, and I answer it the next time I get invited. No, just kidding. Sometimes I'm just like, okay. I should unsubscribe. And I was like,
no problem.
Next time
you get invited
I'll read it
another time, my friend. No problem. The thing is more that we found the aspect interesting that on one end there is the direct assistance in helping me to get more online data for my mobile phone. Thomas was reflecting on what they do, for instance, with the other way around, such as would they also suggest me by analyzing when I'm on the website and in the search mode a downgrade so I save money because I do not have the real consumption, or another version that I do not lose my not used data and get it forwarded into the next month, which is typically not the usual deal here in Germany. Just one prepaid setting supplier is offering it right now. Yeah.
Again, I think that's kind of like company culture at the end of the day. We have one of the telcos in Austria. They say when we change a tariff or we introduce a new tariff that is cheaper than the old one, we make it available to all customers, not just the new ones, because one of our core values is fairness. And if we create a new tariff that's cheaper, everybody gets a fair share. Obviously, to do the math before and understand the impact on the bottom line and the profitability, because I guess they're not stupid. But the main point I'm trying to make here is it's about culture. It's about values of an organization. It's not about tech. Tech can do anything you want for the right amount of money. It's really, do you want to do it, right?
So
it's not about the can.
We need the human in the loop still, that we have some empathy built in. Yeah. Here we go again.
I don't have my or John's buzzword beeper with me, so
human in the loop. Very good.
And empathy.
But as we are in bingo, that was needed, and I'm very much the one with heart. So I wanted to check in that as well. And company culture is an important topic, and hyper-personalization and going very strongly into people's inboxes, wanted or unwanted, is something where when does it get personally disturbing, harassing, or whatever you find? What is the intensity from your observation you see as a guidance?
Honestly, that's, sort of respect to what we had before as conversation. I don't think there is like the number or the frequency or anything that would help, because I think the tolerance, we have developed all the tolerance of this. We see thousands of advertisings a day, tens of thousands of advertisements a day. We're just getting used to it because we just basically we're zoning out, right? We have great filters built in. I don't know how many marketing emails you get a day or a week, right? Most of them, I just look at my phone, swipe, 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 swipe. I just delete them because I forget to subscribe, because the swipe is faster than open it, submit. Yes, I really want to unsubscribe. Yes, I want to subscribe from all of these different emails. It makes it really hard for people. But then again, these kind of brands, they decrease in trust for me. They increase in relevance for me, and I probably buy less from them. So this is like the ultimate signal is I will spend less money. So, but then again, if you're a data-driven company, you probably figure that out sooner than later when it's too much.
Then on top of it, you probably from half of those, if not more than half of those senders, do not even know whether you subscribe consciously or not.
Well, that's a different story. Yes, it reminds me of all the calls from people who want to sell me wine boxes or I don't know, any collectibles. And I never gave those people my number. So different story.
But how does that go into personalization? They claim to send you personalized, hence relevant information.
Well, relevancy is what I attribute. A brand hopefully will never think that what they send is relevant. I am the only person who can say it's relevant or not.
Well, then they shouldn't send you anything at all, because they can't know whether they are relevant for you, as they purchase the data from some nefarious sources.
Yes, but then it's probably, I mean, if this just hello Michael, and that's as far as personalization goes, then I think we can't table that conversation.
We are in agreement to that one. But
yes.
why are they doing it then? So somehow it seems to work for them. I mean, else they wouldn't do it at all, right?
Because it's cheap, and there will always be somebody who will fall for it, right? I mean, it's the same with the rich uncle from some, I don't know, don't want to be like now political African or Indian or whatever country that wants to give you some money if you just transfer $1,000. So again, yes, but again, digital marketing is in itself is super cheap, and you always find somebody who will spend just enough money that it's profitable for you as an organization. But that don't confuse that with good personalization or personalization at all. It's just you're serving probably a very basic need. If somebody markets, I don't know, white t-shirts to me at a reasonable price that are probably not, manufactured by children in some weird factory, and obviously I would be willing to look at that because I always need white t-shirts. I love white t-shirts. But if somebody markets to me like a car that is not an electric car, probably, I wouldn't even open it unless it's a really nice looking one. But in essence, I'm just in market for an electric car right now for very particular brands. So again,
I would like to go once more into the bank example because I was quite impressed, and the mobile phone or the carrier who is dealing fair as one of the ethics approach. I would like to know if you know one of the banks which explain their customers when they ask for loan why they cannot give it to them. Because what I am missing in the real requested customer approach, I would like to have a loan, or I would like to have a renewal for the loan of my house. And I'm going into bargaining and negotiating, and they probably say, you got it for that amount of money, or none. And I cannot understand. I don't see into their black box. Is anybody known by you who is transparent in that consultation?
I wouldn't know. Whatever I now say is just hypothesis. But I mean, if all of us request a loan, even at the same bank at the same time, all our situations are different. Our liquidity is different. Our whatever are the metrics. Will a bank disclose it? Probably just what they have to from a legal perspective, which is probably not much. They probably just have to prove that it will discriminate you, but beyond that,
that's why they don't tell you anything. Because if they tell you, then they have a harassment lawsuit. Simple as.
Okay, I was sometimes too optimistic and too naive that opening Pandora's box might be an option to keep loyalty in a different area, built on trust as well.
Speaking of Pandora's box, let's end on a nice, easy question.
Pandora's hour.
Let's end on a nice, easy question for you. What do you see as the opportunity for the use of artificial intelligence in personalized marketing? You have a minute. Go.
A minute. Wow.
TikTok.
Take your time.
No, there are a couple of things. So number one, artificial intelligence is great at identifying patterns, right? And if you have the opportunity to collect data from different data sources and understand literally journeys of customers digitally or even physically, and can detect, for example, intent, that's a great win as a brand. And if you manage to do that in real time, you can obviously much better help customers in their particular situation. Context basically is king in that particular case, right? And we do have customers who are doing it today already. Obviously, those who have a very strong digital, footprint. So pattern recognition, and then basically using that to understand where customers in their journey, or in the life cycle, and then basically personalizing that interaction. That's a huge win. Secondly, I mean, everybody loves generative AI and what it does. We see really interesting use cases, obviously in the likes of content personalization. We don't do it ourselves, but we support it in the way how we use our models to feed, the generative AI itself, and how we create the prompts to create the content, if that makes sense. To have a more targeted conversation, also from an imagery standpoint, and also when you look at how the way how you phrase your body text. I'm not talking about subject lines. That's it's a nice magic trick, but the real value lies in the way how you communicate with a person. Just imagine, and we've been looking at this, when you have recordings from or email conversations from people, you can deduct from those conversations personality types. We know that because this is something we've been doing for decades as well. So you look at a text, is it like, okay, that person is more like an intro and extrovert person, is more like outgoing, is more like a rebellious person, more constructive, whatever, or anything in between. And you can use that information, for example, to write particular texts. So you could have a different email text for a person that is more rebellious and more forward-looking and futuristic, and selling them like the latest mobile phone, versus a person that is more conservative, maybe looks more after her money. So you would use a different wording, not just a different product, but also the way how you write the text. Because they would read basically it in their own voice and in their own kind of like how to see the world. And that has a much higher impact than if you just use a cookie cutter text and just change the three products that you're promoting, right? So there is, AI gives you scale. That is like, that's like a long winding story, but the bottom line is AI gives you scale in how you create really one-to-one customer experiences. Yeah.
Famous last words.
There they are.
They're there.
All right. Well, I guess barring anything else, that is our CRM convo for the day. It was a quick one. It was a fast hour, I got to say. Michael Obermeier of SaaS Institute, thank you very much for joining us. Your time and your insight was key to the session. Yeah, patience, also good. Thanks to our guests for being with us this week. You can rewatch this or any of our other episodes if you go to the CRM Convos channel on YouTube. Should be easy enough to find, CRM Convos, all one word. Tune in next week when we'll be diving into AI for society and not only for business with our guest Jan Schoenmakers. Hopefully you will be able to join us for that. But until then, thanks once more and be healthy.
See you.
Take care.
Thanks. It was a pleasure.